Check your phone. You just did it without thinking. Before you finished reading that sentence, some part of your brain had already calculated whether there might be something new, a message, a notification, something that wasn't there 30 seconds ago. You do this between 80 and 150 times per day. Not because you're addicted, not because your generation has a focus problem, because your brain is running software that was written 300,000 years ago for a completely different environment. And here's what nobody tells you about that software. It isn't broken. It isn't outdated in the way people mean when they say that. It is running exactly as designed. The problem is what it was designed for, and how precisely the modern world has learned to exploit every single feature of it. Once you understand the actual mechanism, you will stop blaming yourself for behaviors that were never yours to control in the first place. Start with what your brain was actually built to do. Not in the vague evolutionary psychology sense, the specific, documented, measurable thing. Your brain was built to monitor an uncertain environment for signals of change, not to focus, not to be productive, to scan continuously for anything that might represent a threat or an opportunity. Anthropologist David Geary at the University of Missouri has spent decades studying the mismatch between ancestral brain design and modern environments. His conclusion is precise. The human brain did not evolve for stability. It evolved for novelty detection in an environment where novelty usually meant something important was happening. A sound in the grass, a change in the sky, a shift in the behavior of the animals nearby. Every one of those signals required immediate attention. The ancestors who ignored novelty signals didn't survive long enough to become your ancestors. The ones who couldn't stop checking, who compulsively oriented toward every change in their environment, those were the ones who lived. You are descended from the compulsive checkers. Your phone is a novelty machine. Every notification, every refresh, every small red number on an icon is a change in your environment. Your threat detection system, the same system that kept your ancestors alive in the Pleistocene, cannot distinguish between a rustling in the grass and a new message. It just knows something changed, and it responds the same way it always has. Pay attention, now. But the phone is only the surface layer of this. The mechanism goes much deeper. Think about what makes you anxious about social situations, the calculation you run before sending a message, wondering how it will be received, the way you replay a conversation afterward, looking for the moment it went wrong, the persistent, low-level monitoring of how you're being perceived by the people around you. Psychologist Robin Dunbar at Oxford spent decades studying the cognitive demands of social group living and identified something that changed how researchers understand the human brain entirely. The human neocortex, the most recently evolved and metabolically expensive part of your brain, didn't grow to its current size to handle tools, language, or abstract thought. It grew to track social relationships. Specifically, to track the shifting alliances, reputations, and loyalties of a group of approximately 150 people. The number Dunbar identified as the consistent social group size across human hunter-gatherer societies worldwide. In that environment, being excluded from the group was not a social inconvenience. It was a death sentence. A human alone in the Pleistocene had a life expectancy measured in days. Your brain evolved to treat social rejection with the same urgency as physical danger, because for 300,000 years, social rejection and physical danger had the same outcome. This is why rejection feels the same as pain. This is why being left out of a conversation produces a physiological stress response. This is why you replay that argument from 3 years ago at 2 a.m. Your threat detection system is not overreacting. It is doing exactly what it was built to do. It just cannot tell the difference between being excluded from a tribe that will leave you to die and being left on red. Here is the part that most psychology content never reaches. The modern environment didn't accidentally press these buttons. It was engineered to press them. Social media platforms are not products that people use. They are behavioral modification systems designed by teams of engineers with explicit access to real-time data on exactly which features increase compulsive checking behavior. The infinite scroll was not designed for convenience. It was designed because a feed with an end produces a completion signal that allows the brain to stop scanning. A feed without an end never allows the scan to resolve. Your hunter-gatherer brain cannot stop scanning an environment that never stops changing. Former Google design ethicist Tristan Harris has documented in detail how platforms use variable reward schedules, the same mechanism identified in slot machine addiction, to keep the threat detection system permanently activated. You pull the feed down. Sometimes there's something interesting. Sometimes there's nothing. The unpredictability of the reward is precisely what makes the behavior compulsive. This is not a metaphor. The behavioral architecture of these systems was explicitly modeled on B.F. Skinner's variable ratio reinforcement research, the most powerful conditioning schedule ever identified in psychology. The same mechanism that makes gambling impossible to walk away from. Your caveman brain was given a slot machine and told it was a communication tool. Now here is where this stops being just an interesting psychological fact and starts being something you can actually use. Neuroscientist Andrew Huberman at Stanford has documented the physiological signature of the compulsive checking state. When the threat detection system is activated, the brain produces a specific neurochemical cocktail: elevated norepinephrine, suppressed serotonin, narrowed visual focus. This state is designed for immediate threat response. It is not designed for sustained attention, creative thinking, or long-term planning. Every time you check your phone without a specific intention, you trigger this state. Not strongly, not in a way you'd notice in isolation, but the cumulative effect of triggering it 80 to 150 times per day is a baseline neurochemical environment that makes focused, sustained thinking physiologically difficult. You are not distracted because you lack discipline. You are distracted because your threat detection system has been deliberately kept in a state of low-level chronic activation by systems that profit from that activation. The caveman in you is not the problem. The people who reverse-engineered the caveman are. But here is the deepest layer. The same brain that cannot stop checking notifications also cannot stop seeking status, cannot stop comparing itself to others, cannot stop calculating where it sits in the social hierarchy. In the ancestral environment, status was a genuine survival variable. Higher status individuals had better access to food, mates, shelter, and protection. The constant social comparison your brain runs is not vanity. It is a resource allocation system that evolved when your position in a group of 150 people directly determined your likelihood of surviving the winter. Instagram did not create the need to compare yourself to others. It created a global comparison group of several billion people for a brain designed to monitor a group of 150. The result is predictable once you understand the mechanism. Your status tracking system was calibrated for an environment where being in the top quarter of a 150-person group was genuinely achievable and meaningfully protective. In an environment where you're being continuously compared to the most optimized presentation of billions of humans, that same system produces a chronic low-level signal that you are not enough, not because you aren't. Because the comparison set is incompatible with the system running the comparison. Go back to the moment before you started reading this. You checked your phone without thinking, and now you understand exactly what happened when you did. The scan, the novelty detection, the threat system running its 300,000-year-old subroutine in a world it wasn't designed for. You are not broken. You are a precision instrument that has been placed in the wrong environment by people who studied that instrument carefully enough to know exactly which buttons to press. The caveman in you survived everything. Ice ages, predators, starvation, tribal warfare. It got you here across 300,000 years of genuine danger. The least you can do is understand what it's running, so that the next time you pick up your phone without knowing why, you can recognize what's actually happening. Not an addiction. Not a character flaw. A very old brain in a very new world, doing exactly what it was built to do. The problem was never you. If this reframes something you've been blaming yourself for, hit like. It helps more people find this. Subscribe for more psychology breakdowns every week, and drop a comment. Which of these ancient systems do you feel most in your daily life? The novelty scan, the social comparison, or the rejection detector?